Alright, so boom. No, Patrick Mahomes is not the greatest quarterback of all time because he won 3 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, all within his first 6 seasons of the NFL. He's third at best behind Tom Brady, who sits at the throne, Joe Montana at number 2, and then Patrick Mahomes is at number 3. I believe he leapfrogged Peyton Manning, leapfrogged Aaron Rodgers, leapfrogged Dan Marino, leapfrogged Steve Young, leapfrogged Drew Brees, leapfrogged, and then lastly, I believe John Elway and Roger Staubach, Johnny Unitas, he's at 3 at best. And furthermore, we can acknowledge, although he's not the greatest quarterback of all time, and he still got Mahomes, I should say Brady and Montana to chase, he has the greatest start to probably any professional career of all time. We've never seen anything like this. Brady may have won 3 Super Bowls within his first 6 seasons. However, he was not what Patrick Mahomes was. Not only is he leading the league in every passing statistic since entering the league, he has been the Chiefs' best player since entering the league. You can look at what Brady did in Super Bowl 36, but he wasn't the engine that could, who willed them to a victory the entire doggone game. No, really, if you go back and watch that game, it wasn't until that final drive that you said, all right, here we go. That's the kid. I can argue you could have gave that MVP to Ty Law. All 3 Super Bowl MVPs that Patrick Mahomes won, he earned them. I think the only one that maybe you could have an argument is possibly the one in Super Bowl 54 where you could have gave it to Damian Williams, but then you could also make the exact same argument on the flip side for Tom Brady's getting it over James White. But that's neither here nor there. We got to acknowledge greatness. I understand there are individuals who either have, winner's fatigue of watching the Chiefs become a dynasty, getting 3 championships in 5 years. I understand there's people who hate the media hysteria with the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. I know people who are 49ers fans who have been starved of a championship for 29 years. But one way or another, we have to acknowledge and accept greatness. Andy Reid just moved into top 6 all-time coaches. I believe he just leapfrogged over Bill Walsh and took that number 6 spot. I think there's only 5 coaches off my top of my head who I would put in front of Andy Reid. The greatest being Bill Belichick, Vince Lombardi being at number 2, Don Shula at number 3, George Halas at number 4, and then ultimately at 5, I'd have Chuck Noll. And then you have Andy Reid. He's been to 11 conference championships. He's been to 5 Super Bowls, and now he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. Moreover, you go to 10, or I should say 5 conference championships over with Philadelphia, and then 6 consecutive with Kansas City. We got to accept greatness. Call it what it is. Andy Reid is now top 6 coach all time, and you can really argue that he could maybe be in that top 5 depending on who it is that you want to go and take out. Travis Kelce cemented himself, in my opinion, greatest tight end of all time. Although Gronkowski's got 4, I think Travis Kelce has cemented himself as the greatest tight end to have played the game, because call it what it is. Who's a better postseason tight end than Travis Kelce? There's nobody. You could look at Gronkowski's performance, which he was a monster in the playoffs, but he's got some damn eggs in there. Kelce hasn't had a bad playoff game since 2020. And in between that postseason, run, when he had that bad playoff game, he had a all-time performance with 3 touchdowns prior, and then afterwards he had I believe it was in the Super Bowl when they ended up losing against Tampa. He still put on a good show over there. Let's accept greatness. Let's accept greatness. We're looking at one of the best dynasties ever in the history of football. Patrick Mahomes, himself, going back to Mahomes, we're talking about a guy who just joined a group of 5 quarterbacks. Well, he's the 5th. So joined a group of 4 quarterbacks, excluding him, who have 3 Super Bowl championships at the helm as a starter. You got Tom Brady, you got Terry Bradshaw, you got Joe Montana, and you got Troy Aikman, and then there's Patrick Mahomes. Nobody else has been able to do it. Steve Young got 3, but 2 of them was as Montana's backup. We're looking at absolute greatness. And then there's a lot of people who talk about, well, there's no way he could catch Brady because Brady beat him in the head-to-head. Let's call it what it is. First and foremost, Mahomes did beat Brady in a regular season game, but if we're talking about playoffs, call it what it is. Call a spade a spade. If D4 doesn't line off sides, it's over. Mahomes is heading to the Super Bowl in his first season as a starter. Call it what it is. Now, granted, Kansas City never saw the football again after that moment. Because remember, Brady threw that game-losing interception, and this is not a knock on Brady at all. I acknowledge him as the greatest quarterback of all time, but let's not try to rewrite the narrative regarding Mahomes. Granted, Super Bowl 55 in Tampa Bay, they were favored to win, the Chiefs that is, and they absolutely laid a dud. But if you go back and you watch that game, there was almost no damn way in hell that Kansas City was fixing to win. Tampa Bay may not have entered favorites. They were the best team on the field that day. They completely outplayed the Buccaneers, and Mahomes and Kelce were the only two people who showed up to play that day. Look at the offensive line, got dominated. There was nothing that man could do. Shades of Tom Brady's performance, Super Bowl 42 and also Super Bowl 46, where the goddamn D-line, the front seven was getting after him. So when you go back and you look at those games, like, damn, they didn't put up no points. You got to give the credit to the defense. And again, the only reason why I use Brady, and I'm going to bring up Montana as well, is because this is who you now have to compare him to. You can't look at other, quarterback performances. Mahomes has now put himself number 3 all time. And for those of you who may disagree and you got an Elway in front, or maybe you got a Marino in front, I need you right now, put inside the comment section why your argument against Mahomes being at number 3, even though you've only seen 6 seasons. I personally believe I got to see from a quarterback 7 seasons before I even start talking about all time. But Mahomes is an exception to the rule because his numbers through the first 6 seasons and his production has been otherworldly. We've never seen anything like this in the history of football. As for Montana, the reason why Mahomes is behind him, some people talk about stacked teams or whatever the case may be. I look at football as a team sport, right? But because we're in the day and age where people want to compare production from, quarterback against quarterback, when Mahomes went, or I should say when Montana went into Super Bowl games, he played against Ken Anderson. He was the reigning Super Bowl, or I should say the reigning MVP of the league. Then he took on Dan Marino. He was the reigning MVP of the league. Might I add, he ripped up the league, throwing for 5,000 that year in '84. Then he took on Boomer Esiason, who was the MVP. And then the very next year, he took on John Elway, who had won the MVP 2 years prior. So that's 4 MVP quarterbacks that Montana went into Super Bowls and absolutely lit up the field. Granted, you play against the defense, but you got to go out there and play football. Now, I'll use this as an argument to now back up Mahomes being not only the greatest start of a career of all time, but also the 3rd greatest quarterback of all time. Take a look at the San Francisco defense. Dogs, right? They were shut out in the first half. They shut out the Kansas City up until that last second field goal to close out the doggone half. Well, I believe it was like a couple of seconds that remained, or maybe about 20. They took a knee and then they went into the half, right? But Kansas City offensively did nothing. You were able to get down the field, and then what happened? You have a beautiful 52-yard pass that should have been intercepted from Patrick Mahomes to Mecole Hardman. Then Isaiah Pacheco fumbles the football, right? No points. You open up the second half, opening drive, interception from Mahomes. He literally wheeled his team back, playing down the stretch. I know people are going to complain about, calls not being called, but call it what it was. The referees let them motherfuckers go out there and play. We've been complaining all season long about the inconsistency in officiating, which I completely agree with. But in the Super Bowl, it was W refs. It was W refs. There were missed calls on both sides as it pertains to holding, but you can argue whether it was a hold or it wasn't a hold. Now, we saw some videos where some looks somewhat egregious, but you can make the argument for both sides. Truly, there was no sort of bias from the officials in this game. If you got to go and say that, go back and rewatch the game. Go rewatch the replays of the calls that you call into question and write them down. Then furthermore, write down the ones that you may have missed. I promise you, it's down the middle, bro. We got to call a spade a spade. Then also look at Mahomes' performances in Super Bowls, right? Of course, we're not going to exclude 55 when he got absolutely dominated, but I talked about that prior. In 54, they were down by 10. He had to lead the comeback, which he did in that fourth quarter alongside the team nutting up and playing good football. Then you take a look at the one last year. Mahomes score. He was able to make it happen in the second half, and it wasn't some merchant dump off, which I still think is stupid, where they make it seem as if somebody dumping, dinking, and dunking makes you a bad quarterback because you're not throwing bombs away. Not everybody got to be a gunslinger. You mean to tell me if I'm able to pick up 6, I'm able to pick up 7, I'm able to pick up 3, I'm able to pick up 5, that's not me marching my team down the field, it's a knock against you because you're a check down pop. Come on now. I may make jokes about check down popping, but I know my football, and it's foolish to put a knock on somebody for that. I saw people talking about Purdy like that. Take that bitch up out of here, all right? That don't make no sense. In Super Bowl 39, I believe that Tom Brady only threw one pass beyond the fucking 20 yards the entire goddamn game, and we sitting over here talking about, oh well, a quarterback who's dinking and dunking can't be considered great. Let's stop it. But in Super Bowl 57, trailing by 10 at halftime. Then you're trailing by 10 in the first half. You kick the field goal, you turn the football over, but you make it happen. You absolutely needed to get a stop if you were San Francisco the last two drives. That final drive in the fourth quarter, and then also in overtime. You can't ask for more from Brock Purdy. He led you down the field when it was tied 16-16. You kicked the field goal, you didn't score the touchdown, right? You kicked the field goal, but all your defense got to do is get a stop. We saw multiple fourth down attempts from Kansas City. They picked up the first down. 49ers got to get a stop. You held the Chiefs to 19 points in regulation. Furthermore, and I think this is the most important point that a lot of people are missing when they talk about this game. The Chiefs don't score a touchdown had it not been for the special teams, miscue from San Francisco. And only thing you could say about Ray McCloud is he didn't fall on the football. But it did hit that dude's foot, unfortunately, and then Kansas City gets the ball. MVS scores the very next play. Outside of that, you couldn't ask San Francisco's defense to play any better. But when it came to the most clutch moment in the game. I understand the Dre Greenlaw injury, tearing his doggone Achilles. That's very unfortunate. But the 49ers still played a magnificent defensive game without him down the stretch. Purdy gives you leads you down the field. Him and McCaffrey and Jennings leads you down the field. Moody makes the field goal. All you need is one stop and you are Super Bowl champions. You failed to do it. Kansas City kicks the field goal. Into overtime you go. San Fran wins the toss. They go down the field. McCaffrey cements himself as the future Super Bowl MVP, driving his team down the field on 30 touches, 160 total yards, and a touchdown. They fail to find the end zone. Moody kicks the go-ahead field goal again. Now your defense got to get a stop. Fourth down, you can't stop Mahomes. Mahomes uses his feet, goes down the field. Not only his arms, also his feet, to bring them inside the fucking 10-yard line. 49ers defense don't know the fucking rules, because even I didn't necessarily know that they would have carried, the overtime into double OT, because it was the first following drive after a field goal try. I thought as time expired, that would have been the end of the game if they can't get the job done. Evidently, they changed that rule. People were talking about it in the chat last night. I didn't recognize what they were referencing. Now I know. But one way or another, it seems the 49ers didn't recognize the rule. They were looking at the clock, hoping that Kansas City would go and call timeout. Them boys had to make a play, and they did not. And then ultimately, Charvarius Ward done took, on the motion, stepped over to Kelce, left open McCole Hardman, and game done. You got to acknowledge greatness. And that's the reason why I want to drive this point home. Again, no, Patrick Mahomes is not the greatest quarterback of all time. I know Chiefs homers, Brady haters, or, people who are creatures of the moment want to go and appoint him the greatest to have ever played the game. It's foolish to do so. However, we can acknowledge that he has the greatest start of an NFL career and arguably a sports career, period, across the board. Furthermore, this Kansas City team is now a dynasty, and they won the championship with different teams. You said, Mahomes is only good because he had an all-world receiver in Tyreek Hill, all-world tight end in Travis Kelce. Cool. Since November, before we even get over to this season, last year, Tyreek Hill, send him to Miami. Get him the fuck up out of here. Mahomes still goes on and wins a championship with the Chiefs. All right, cool. Travis Kelce, first team All-Pro. This season, he's not an All-Pro for the first time since 2015. You lead the league in drops. You don't have a single 1,000-yard receiver. Yes, Kelce was only 16 yards away entering Week 18. He was a healthy scratch. I was in L.A. hoping I could see Kelce become 8 consecutive seasons with 1,000 yards. They sat him one way or another. The statistics are the statistics. You didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver. Your defense is the youngest in the NFL, but they are absolutely balling. Remember, a lot of people always make arguments about, well, there's a young defense. That's why they didn't go out there and perform. Their defense was absolutely balling. Mahomes, this was his worst season as a starter in his career. Can we acknowledge that? No 30 touchdowns, all this other stuff. Still goes into the postseason, gets the job done when you need it to get done. Let's acknowledge greatness, bruh. Let's acknowledge greatness. You need big-time players to make big-time plays in big-time games, and those guys showed up. Kelce had 1 catch, 1 yard, 1 target in the first half. Comes out in the second half, multiple different targets. I forget how much. I think maybe about 9 or 10. He had 8 additional catches. He ended with 94 yards. Come on now. Acknowledge greatness. Let's call it what it is. And I'm not a Chiefs fan whatsoever. Y'all know I'm Pittsburgh Steeler till I die, bruh. But call it what it is, bro. We are watching history, and truly, it's one of those situations where, despite the fact you may not like it, despite the fact that it doesn't feel good because it's at the behest of your teams, call it what it is. This is an absolute masterclass put on by the Chiefs organization, the Hunt family, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, that young defense and company, bro. They get the fucking job done, and guess what? Mahomes restructuring his doggone contract, that defense being as young as they are, the youngest in the NFL, they got a chance to do something that very few teams have ever been able to do. And there's only been 2 teams ever in NFL history who's ever three-peated. I believe the late 20s Packers and then that 60s, Green Bay Packers as well. Oh, pardon me, not the late 20s Packers. It was the late 40s Browns. They had 3 in a row, and then also the Packers in 65, 66, 67. They don't acknowledge the 65 championship because the Super Bowl started in 66, so they're not going to count that. It was an NFL championship, but that's neither here nor there. I want y'all to comment down below. Do you believe that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time? Me personally, I have him at number 3. That's where he sits right now. But I think we can all acknowledge he is the best football player playing football right now, or at least quarterback, if you want to go defender, whatever the case is. But I don't think there's a single person who is touching, the football with helmets and shoulder pads who are playing better than Patrick Mahomes. He is by far the best quarterback. And I think Shannon Sharp said it earlier today. The distance between Mahomes at number 1 and number 2 is greater than whoever you have at number 2 and number 5. It is an absolute masterclass that we are watching from the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have a very unique opportunity to join the Green Bay Packers of the 60s and also the Bears, the Browns of the late 40s, where you saw Green Bay, or I should say you saw Miami win 2 in a row, 72 and 73. They could not win that third. Pittsburgh went back-to-back 2 times in 75 and 76, and then also 78 and 79. They could not win that third one. You saw the 49ers win 2 in a row in 88 and 89. They could not get the job done in 90. You saw the Cowboys get it done in 92 and 93. They couldn't get it in 94. They lost in that NFC Championship. Denver won 2 in a row in 97, 98. They ain't get the job done in 99. And then you saw the Patriots win 2 in a row in 2003, 2004, but they did not get the job done. Credit to Champ Bailey in 2005. And now, take a look at the Chiefs. They're still incredibly young. They got an opportunity to get the job done. I want y'all in the chat to not only comment on if Mahomes is where he's at, but also, do you believe that Kansas City can pull off the three-peat? Because it's possible, but do you believe that it's probable? That's all I got to say about that. Sensational Super Bowl. Sensational Super Bowl.